screaming alarm pierced the pre-dawn darkness. Vincent Barnes had 3 seconds to decide. Fix this engine or watch 500 American soldiers die. The 63-year-old mechanic froze as Lieutenant Blake Peterson burst into the motor pool. His face was white with terror. But here's why this moment changed military history forever. This story shows how a man dismissed as worthless became the difference between victory and catastrophe. By the end of this video, you'll understand something powerful. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a tank or missile, it's knowledge that can't be taught in any manual. Welcome to the Story Chronicles. Subscribe and never miss a mission. January 15th, 1991. Operation Desert Shield was about to become Desert Storm. The motor pool at Forward Operating Base, Charlie hummed with desperate energy. Vincent Barnes knelt beside an M1 Abrams tank. His oil-stained coveralls hung loose on his weathered frame. Around him, young soldiers worked frantically. They were preparing vehicles for the largest tank battle since World War II. Lieutenant Peterson strode across the concrete. His polished West Point confidence gleamed brighter than his boots. He spotted the old civilian contractor hunched over the tank's engine compartment. His jaw tightened with irritation. "Barnes!" Peterson's voice cracked like a whip. "You're 3 hours behind schedule on these M1s." Vincent straightened slowly. He wiped hydraulic fluid from his hands. His pale blue eyes met the lieutenant's glare without flinching. At 63, he'd outlasted more officers than this kid had years of life. "This tank's got transmission problems," Vincent said calmly. "Needs proper fixing, not speed." Peterson stepped closer. His voice dropped to what he thought was reasonable. "Listen, old man. I don't know what backwater garage you crawled out of, but this is the United States Army. We have deadlines." The insult hung in the air like diesel fumes. Several mechanics stopped working to watch. They'd seen this dance before. The college boy with fresh brass trying to educate the civilian, the man who'd been fixing war machines since before most of them were born. But here's what Peterson didn't know, what none of them knew. Vincent Barnes wasn't just any mechanic. The motor pool operated on an invisible caste system, officers at the top, their authority carved in stone by education and breeding. Below them, the sergeants and corporals who actually made things work. At the bottom, the civilians, contractors like Vincent, who kept the machine running but never truly belonged. Vincent had occupied that bottom rung for 3 months, a ghost in coveralls, invisible to young soldiers racing toward war. They saw him as leftover equipment from another era, useful but replaceable. Only Corporal Austin Cooper was different. At 22, he'd grown up in his father's garage. He recognized mastery when he saw it. He'd watched Vincent work like others studied textbooks. "Mr. Barnes," Cooper approached as Vincent emerged from under a Bradley fighting vehicle. "That transmission you fixed yesterday, the impossible one." Vincent looked up. His face was streaked with grease. "What about it?" "It's running smoother than factory spec. How'd you know it was the torque converter?" For the first time that day, Vincent smiled. Sound. Every engine talks if you know the language. But Cooper had no idea he was talking to a legend. That evening, Colonel Nathan Rodriguez made his usual rounds. 23 years of command had taught him something important. Real intelligence came from the ground level, not briefing rooms. He found Vincent alone in the corner. The old man was using a manual lathe to machine a part that officially didn't exist. "That's precision work," Rodriguez observed. Vincent didn't look up. "It'll do the job. What's your assessment of our readiness?" The question surprised Vincent. Colonels didn't usually ask mechanics for strategic opinions. He considered carefully. "Equipment's solid. Your people know their manuals. But when things go sideways, and they always do, textbook answers won't save lives." Rodriguez leaned against the workbench. "And when things go sideways, what can you do?" Vincent finally looked up. "Whatever needs doing, sir." The colonel had no idea. He was talking to the man who would soon prove that statement in the most dramatic way possible. Join the Story Chronicles, your front row seat to the most incredible military stories ever told. January 17th, 1991. Desert Storm began with surgical precision. For 9 days, Allied forces rolled through Iraqi defenses. They moved like a mechanical avalanche. Behind the front lines, Vincent's team worked 12-hour shifts. They kept the war machine operational. Then came January 26th, the day everything went wrong. Alpha Company had pushed 15 miles ahead of the main force, 12 M1 tanks and 8 Bradley fighting vehicles on a reconnaissance mission. Simple orders: observe, report, withdraw at dawn. But at 0347 hours, Iraqi commandos struck their supply convoy. They hit with devastating precision. Rockets and small arms fire erupted from 3 directions. Within minutes, the supply convoy was burning wreckage. 37 Americans were dead or wounded. But the real catastrophe was just beginning. The reconnaissance force was cut off. No fuel, no ammunition, no communications. Iraqi electronic warfare systems jammed every radio frequency. 20 American vehicles sat helpless in the desert. Enemy armor massed for a counterattack that would shatter the entire Allied offensive. At FOB Charlie, Colonel Rodriguez stared at satellite imagery. It showed Iraqi tank columns moving into position. 24 hours had passed since last contact with Alpha Company. "Sir," his operations officer reported, "we've got search aircraft up, but the sandstorm's grounding most air support. If we're going to extract them, we need to move fast." "How long to organize a relief column?" 8 hours minimum with this weather." Too long. Everyone in that room knew it, and somewhere in the desert 20 isolated tank crews knew it too. That's when Corporal Cooper burst through the door. His face was flushed with desperation and hope. "Sir, Mr. Barnes has a solution." Lieutenant Peterson was monitoring communications. He scoffed audibly. "Colonel, with respect, we don't have time for civilian theories." Oh. But Rodriguez was already moving. Where is he? They found Vincent surrounded by maps and manuals. Half the electrical components of a communications vehicle were spread around him. His coveralls were soaked despite the pre-dawn chill. "Mr. Barnes," Rodriguez called out, "Corporal Cooper says you can reach them." Vincent looked up. His eyes were intense. Not a guarantee, a possibility. He walked to a tactical map spread across his workbench. Red marks showed Iraqi positions, blue showed friendly forces. A black circle marked Alpha Company's last known location. "Your boys are here," Vincent pointed to the circle. "Surrounded, probably running on fumes, cut off by sophisticated jamming that blocks digital communications and GPS. Peterson stepped forward. His jaw was tight. "So what's your brilliant insight?" Vincent ignored the sarcasm. He patted the hood of an old M35 cargo truck. This beauty was built in 1968. No computers, no GPS, no digital systems, just pure mechanical engineering. Rodriguez studied the truck. "Continue. I can modify this engine for extended range, strip everything non-essential for extra fuel and supplies. The key is navigation. I can use dead reckoning and celestial positioning, skills the Army stopped teaching when satellites took over." Peterson laughed harshly. "You're talking about driving blind into hostile territory, using World War II techniques. It's suicide." "Maybe," Vincent acknowledged, "but your boys are dead for sure if nobody tries." Rodriguez was quiet. He was weighing impossible options. Finally he spoke. "What do you need?" 12 hours, 6 mechanics, and someone crazy enough to ride shotgun." Cooper stepped forward immediately. "I'll go." Vincent looked at the young soldier. He saw something approaching respect. "It won't be a Sunday drive, son. I know what I'm volunteering for." Rodriguez made his decision. "Do it. Whatever you need." The next 12 hours transformed the old cargo truck. It became something that belonged in a dystopian war film. Vincent bored out engine cylinders. He installed a supercharger jury-rigged from Bradley parts. He created a fuel system that would make racing engineers weep. The truck bed became an armored cargo bay. It was filled with fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, and emergency rations. Vincent even mounted a .50 caliber machine gun, though he hoped they wouldn't need it. While Vincent worked mechanical magic, Cooper handled navigation equipment, no GPS, no digital maps, no satellite communication. Instead, Vincent pulled out instruments most soldiers had never seen: magnetic compass, sextant, paper charts marked with terrain features and star positions. "You really know how to use those?" Cooper asked. He held the sextant reverently. "Learned in Vietnam," Vincent replied. He didn't look up from the engine. "We didn't have satellites then." "You navigated by stars, landmarks, and instinct. Or you died." As word spread through the base, something unexpected happened. Soldiers volunteered to help, not because they understood the technical details, but because they recognized something they hadn't seen before: someone willing to risk everything for people he'd never met. Even Lieutenant Peterson approached Vincent as the truck neared completion. "Mr. Barnes," the young officer began. His usual arrogance was gone. "I owe you an apology. I misjudged you." Vincent considered the lieutenant's words. "No harm done. In your position, I might have reacted the same way. Anything I can do to help? Keep the coffee hot. We'll need it when we get back." At 1800 hours, Vincent climbed behind the wheel. Cooper took shotgun. Navigation instruments were spread across his lap. In back were enough supplies to keep 20 soldiers fighting for another week. Colonel Rodriguez approached the driver's window. "Vincent, what you're doing goes beyond any contract. This is voluntary. Dangerous. If you change your mind, nobody will blame you." Vincent met the colonel's gaze. "Those boys aren't volunteers, sir. They're where they are because they were ordered there. Seems to me that gives them the right to expect someone to come get them." They shook hands. Soldier to soldier. Vincent fired up the heavily modified engine. The truck roared to life with controlled thunder. Every component was pushed beyond design limits, but held together by skill and determination. But what happened next would prove something important. Sometimes the most sophisticated technology is no match for human knowledge, courage, and the refusal to abandon those who need help. The desert at night was an alien world. Without city lights or GPS displays, the landscape became an ocean of shadows and starlight. Vincent drove by instinct and memory. He followed terrain features that existed more in his mind than on any map. Cooper handled navigation. He called out compass headings and checked position against star charts. It was slow, methodical work requiring constant attention. One mistake could send them into Iraqi patrols or miles off course. "How do you know we're going right?" Cooper asked during their third hour. Vincent pointed through the cracked windshield. "See that ridgeline against the stars? That's how you navigate. The desert looks empty, but it's full of landmarks if you know how to read them." At 0200 hours, they encountered their first Iraqi patrol. Vincent spotted them before Cooper did. 3 BTR armored vehicles moving in formation 2 miles north. He immediately killed the engine and coasted behind a sand dune. "What now?" Cooper whispered. "We wait. And pray they don't have thermal imaging." For 30 agonizing minutes they sat in complete silence. The patrol passed through the valley below. These weren't demoralized conscripts. These were professional soldiers, well-equipped and moving with purpose. When the patrol finally disappeared, Vincent restarted the engine. He adjusted course. "We go around. No point fighting battles we don't need." They reached Alpha Company's approximate position just before dawn. Vincent parked in a depression and climbed to the nearest ridge with Cooper. Through binoculars, they could see American vehicles a mile away, still fighting, but obviously in trouble. The tanks and Bradleys formed a defensive circle. Guns pointed outward. Several showed rocket damage. Smoke rose from burning vehicles. Iraqi forces occupied positions on 3 sides. They were waiting for the Americans to make a fatal move. "How do we get to them?" Cooper asked. Vincent studied terrain, enemy positions, the angle of rising sun. His mind calculated variables that had nothing to do with computers: distance, fuel consumption, visibility, timing, variables that meant the difference between rescue and disaster. "We wait for full daylight," he said finally. "Then we go in fast and loud." That doesn't sound very tactical. Vincent smiled grimly. Sometimes the best tactic is the one nobody expects. At 0700 hours, Vincent Barnes made his move. He drove a 30-year-old truck straight toward one of the most heavily defended positions in the Iraqi desert. He came from the east. He used the rising sun to blind enemy gunners. The modified engine screamed at maximum power. It pushed the old vehicle faster than physics should have allowed. Cooper worked the radio. He broadcast on every frequency. Thunder 6, this is Anvil 1-1. Package delivery en route. The response crackled through static. Relief was unmistakable. Anvil 1-1, Thunder 6, are you insane? This position is hot. Vincent grabbed the handset. Thunder 6, we're coming in whether you're ready or not. Suggest you cover our approach. What followed was 3 minutes of pure chaos. Iraqi forces were caught completely off guard. They opened fire with everything available. American tanks recognized the rescue attempt. They laid down covering fire that shook the ground for miles. And through the middle of it all, Vincent Barnes drove like a man possessed by angels of mercy. Bullets shattered the windshield. Shrapnel tore holes in armor plating. The engine temperature gauge redlined. Coolant sprayed from punctured hoses. But the truck kept moving. It carried hope toward the embattled Americans. They reached the perimeter just as the engine finally seized. Pistons welded by heat and abuse. Vincent coasted to a stop behind an M1 tank. Steam rose from the destroyed power plant. "Well," he said to Cooper. Cooper was staring in shock at being alive. "That's as far as she goes." Tank Commander Sergeant Diana Powell approached Vincent. He was distributing supplies and working on damaged vehicles with improvised tools. "Mister, I don't know who you are, but you just saved 23 lives." Vincent looked up from tangled wires and circuit boards. "Just doing my job, Sergeant." "This isn't any job in any manual. Sometimes the manual doesn't cover everything." By afternoon, the reconnaissance force was mobile again. Not perfect, not pretty, but capable of fighting back to friendly lines. Vincent rode in Powell's tank commander hatch. He had finally abandoned his destroyed truck to the desert. When they reached the main base, a crowd waited at the motor pool. Officers, enlisted personnel, civilians, all wanting to see the mechanic who had driven into hell and brought 23 soldiers home. Colonel Rodriguez was first to greet them. "Vincent, I've seen many heroic acts. This ranks at the top." Vincent climbed down from the tank. His coveralls were torn and smoke-blackened. "Just glad it worked out, sir." Lieutenant Peterson stepped forward. His arrogance was completely absent. "Mr. Barnes, I completely underestimated what you were capable of." Vincent studied the young officer. He saw past uniform to the person underneath. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." They shook hands. It marked the end of one relationship and beginning of another. Around them, soldiers who had previously ignored the old mechanic now looked at him with unmistakable respect. Over the following weeks, Vincent became legend within the 1st Armored Division, but the man himself remained unchanged. Same long hours, same impossible problems, same patient dedication to keeping machines and people operational. The war ended February 28th. But Vincent's work continued. Lieutenant Peterson, humbled by experience, became one of his most eager students. He learned practical skills his academy training never covered. "Mechanical work," Vincent explained as they rebuilt a transmission, "doesn't care about rank or education. Machines only respond to knowledge and skill. If you want to lead mechanics, you need to understand what they do and why it matters." When the division redeployed to the United States, Colonel Rodriguez offered Vincent a permanent position. He would lead technical training programs. "We need people like you," Rodriguez explained. "People who understand both technology and human elements. The Army needs trainers who can bridge theory and practice." Vincent chose a different path. He established a training center in Georgia. Military mechanics and civilians could learn advanced troubleshooting techniques. His program emphasized practical skills over theoretical knowledge. Hands-on problem-solving over textbook solutions. Years later, military historians gave Vincent's rescue mission only a footnote in official records. But among Gulf War veterans, his name carried weight no medal could convey. Sergeant Powell became a master sergeant and training instructor. She often told new mechanics about the night a civilian contractor drove into hostile territory to save her crew. Leadership isn't about rank, she would say. It's about risking everything for people you've never met because it's right. Lieutenant Peterson retired as a colonel. He never forgot Vincent's lesson about earning respect versus demanding it. In his final report, he wrote something important. True leadership is demonstrated not by those seeking recognition, but by those quietly accepting responsibility for getting the job done regardless of personal cost. Vincent Barnes passed away in 2018. He was surrounded by former students who had traveled worldwide to be with him. Among mourners was Diana Powell Johnson, the former tank commander whose life Vincent had saved. "Mrs. Barnes," she told Vincent's widow, "your husband gave me 30 extra years of life. I saw my children grow up, met my grandchildren, because of what he did in 1991. He would have said he was just doing his job. Yes, ma'am. But his job was saving lives, and he was very good at it." Vincent Barnes reminds us that heroism doesn't always wear uniforms or carry weapons. Sometimes it comes in oil-stained coveralls, armed with skill, determination, and unwillingness to abandon those needing help. In an age of high technology, Vincent proved human knowledge remains irreplaceable. He showed that sophisticated equipment is only as good as the person maintaining it. True expertise comes not from textbooks, but from patient practice and continuous learning. Most importantly, Vincent demonstrated something powerful. The greatest courage often happens far from spotlights, performed by ordinary people choosing extraordinary actions simply because they're needed. One click. The story chronicles. Don't miss the next debrief.